Good evening from Luther College. This is a event on the recent developments in Myanmar. My name is Orçun Selcuk. I'm a professor in the political science department. Today we're going to have this event again on the developments that has been happening in the Southeast Asian country of Myanmar. We have 4 students from Luther College. But this event is sponsored by the CEPE, which is the Center for Ethics and Public Engagement at Luther College. The center's purpose is to facilitate dialogue and understanding about responsible citizenship and the most pressing ethical issues of our time. And we have organized this as a pop-up event because I think the developments in Myanmar also have ethical and global relevance. And we're also very privileged to have, 4 Luther students joining us from 1 from the core and then 3 actually from our Rochester campus. So we are going to have this event for about an hour. So we will finish at 6. Throughout this event, you will be able to use the Q&A feature of Zoom. So after the students, start speaking, feel free to pose your questions either anonymously or you can use your name. We will address those questions in the last 15 minutes or so. So the way we're going to go today is it will be a student-centered event. So this is not a event that will be the ultimate word about what's going on in Myanmar. Or it's not an event that analyzes Myanmar based on a scholarly point of view. But we will first begin with introducing the students. So we have 4 students, as I said, from Myanmar who are currently enrolled at Luther College. Nora, Thawdar, Eric, and Myo. They will introduce themselves. They will talk about their ethnic backgrounds. One of the important things about Myanmar is that it's an ethnically diverse country. And then Nora, one of those students, she will offer a brief history of Myanmar. For those of you who are not as familiar with the country's, history, that I think plays a significant role to understand our developments. But again, today our main goal is not to offer a historical or political, account of what's going on in Myanmar, but more about how it relates to these 4 students' lives. As students who are, enrolled in institution in the United States, but have family members back home. Based on that, all students, will reflect on their personal background and how it relates to the recent military coup that happened in Myanmar. And then we'll end it up with question and answer. Meanwhile, I will also offer some of my reflections on Myanmar and how it fits into being an international student in the United States and how all the anxieties that come with that, that dealing with issues here, but also dealing with issues that are, thousands of kilometers away from Decorah, Iowa. And then in the end of our meeting today, I will moderate some questions. So feel free to again send questions, and I will direct those questions to Nora, Thawdar, Eric, and Myo. So without a further ado, I'm gonna pass it to students, Nora, Thawdar, Eric, and Myo. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nora Nyi Myint, and I'm currently a junior studying at Luther College. I'm double majoring in international studies and women and gender studies. I am part of the ethnic group in Myanmar called Kayin, which is in the south. I will pass it on to my peer.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Thawdar Zin, and I am a senior at Luther College majoring in environmental studies. And I am, my ethnicity is in ethnic minority under the major ethnic groups called Shan in the east. And my family was directly affected by previous military regime.
Hello, my name is San Thu, but you can call me Eric. I'm a junior in Luther College studying visual communications as a major and journalism as a minor. And my ethnic group is Rakhine, which is in western side of Myanmar.
Hi all, thank you for coming. My name is Myo. I am an environmental science major and mathematics minor. My ethnic group is Kayin from the southern part.
Thank you for the introductions. For our audience, as you can see, we have 4 students from Myanmar, but they're also coming from a diversity of ethnic groups, which I think reflects the country's, ethnic and diversity. That is one of the main maybe reasons why we're here, right? That the students will further reflect on that. So again, the way we're going to do it, this is not an educational Zoom meeting, but to set the minimum, in other words, to have some background about Myanmar, I'm gonna pass it to Nora, who will offer a brief, political trajectory, a brief history of Myanmar. In other words, how did we get here, Nora?
Hello, everyone. So as it was announced, I will be talking about the brief history of Myanmar, and I will start from the independence that we got from the British colonial rule. So Myanmar started off rocky since then because our independence father, General Aung San, and his allies were assassinated before they were even able to create a country that they envisioned. Now, with that in mind, the 1962 military coup came around in which General Nyi Myint took over the country and he instilled a socialist regime, which really led to the whole country becoming impoverished and independent news and such forth were blocked in the nation. Now, keeping that atmosphere in mind, we will move on to the 1988 revolution, which is extremely important to all of us today, here, the students, because it was our parents' generation. During this time, people were already unhappy with the military junta, but what really was the last straw was the devaluing of the currency, which led to many students protesting against the government, the military junta, and many of them, thousands, were killed, detained, and most of our parents' educational endeavors were halted and ruined. So this is also the time that Aung San Suu Kyi, our current leader, became well known throughout the nation because she is the daughter of General Aung San, the independence father, as I have said before, and she supported the people's move and fight against the military junta and for democracy. She made sure that she could spread these news to people abroad, which was extremely hard at the time because Myanmar was extremely isolated and people were not able to communicate as easily as today in English, which is hard. So with these kind of things in mind, she was able to get the Nobel Peace Prize, but also for her efforts, she was put under house arrest from 1988 to 2012. So during that whole time of dictatorial rule and still under that military regime, in 2008, they created a constitutional law in which they claimed that 25% of Myanmar's parliamentary seats must always be allocated to the military. They also made sure that Aung San Suu Kyi will never be able to become a president just because she had married a foreigner who is from the UK. Now, all of this happened and there were a lot of sanctions placed on Myanmar. Myanmar became even more isolated and those who were very active during 1988 were detained or at least really prohibited by the government to do anything at all. So 2012, Aung San Suu Kyi was released from her house arrest and she and the past student revolutionary leaders came forward to prepare National League for Democracy Party to be ready for the 2015 elections. Now, these elections came around in 2015 and National League for Democracy, NLD, won a landslide victory. Now, with this victory, we thought that Myanmar is finally going to transition to becoming a democratic nation. Remember the 2008 constitutional law. There are still 25% of the parliamentary seats allocated to the military. And so even though NLD was trying hard to improve the infrastructure, power outages were less, education was becoming better, investments were coming in, sanctions were getting lifted. But what happens? Well, the military was still doing whatever they want, especially in terms of harming and hurting and killing our ethnic groups, which we are all part of as we have introduced ourselves as, in addition to the Rohingya crisis that was happening in Myanmar. Please understand that it is extremely hard for a country when the military and the government are divided and not united in any way. It is the citizens that suffer the brunt of it all. So with this unstable state, here comes around the 2020 elections, and NLD won again with more than 80% of the votes. We thought it was going well and we were celebrating, but then the most recent military coup came around on February 1st, 2021. And the claim that they made for this coup was that the votes were fraudulent. I wonder if that sounds familiar to many of us today here. With that in mind, they detained a lot of the NLD leaders, including Aung San Suu Kyi and many others, as well as journalists and artists who were anti-military. So it brings us to the many protests today and the extreme human rights violations that the military junta is doing right now in Myanmar under the rule of Min Aung Hlaing, which is the person that it's hurtful to even hear his name for us. So with a heavy heart, I will pass it on to my peers, Eric and Myo, to tell you more about what's happening domestically in Myanmar.
Thank you very much, Nora, for passing it on to us. And also thank you very much for telling everyone a brief history about Myanmar and the tragic things that are happening to all of us right now. So we all, as Nora said, Min Aung Hlaing indiscriminately took over Myanmar and then ignored everybody's votes. And because of that, everybody's very angry. And in response to that, we are trying to stress on many domestic movements to tell the world and to tell the military that we do not like what is going on, that we cannot accept this indiscriminate abuse of power. And the most important movement that we're trying to stress on is the civil disobedience movement. The civil disobedience movement is where we are actively disobeying what the military is telling us to do, and we're encouraging citizens around Myanmar who are serving in very important civil roles to stop working, because we have no reason to obey to what they're telling us to do, because they're basically telling us to do things that we do not like. And so, which is why you can see today that there are so many protests on the streets of multiple major cities in Myanmar, including Yangon, Mandalay, Naypyidaw. Citizens going out on the streets telling people to stop working, telling people that what's happening in the country is insane. And that is the number one movement that we're stressing on. The second thing that we've all been doing is the Facebook campaigns. Thanks to the existence of social media, it's so much easier for people to connect with everyone else from around the world. And because of that privilege, because of that technological advantage, Myanmar people in the country and around the world have been using this to spread the word, to spread the news, and to tell everybody that what's happening in our country is just unacceptable and is inhumane. And we've been using it as a platform to virtually and peacefully protest, and also to gain media attention so that we can spread the word to more people. And another thing that is central to what's happening domestically is the banging of pots and pans every day at 8 p.m. So this is a cultural belief in Myanmar that whenever we bang pots and pans, it is to get rid of evil. And ever since the military used their power to take over the country, People around the country have been using pots and pans and banging them every day at 8 p.m. sharp to let the world know and let everybody in the country know that people are dissatisfied with what's going on. Another central thing that we've been doing is using this hand gesture. So this hand gesture symbolizes a revolution, and this was inspired by the Hunger Games. This hand gesture was also seen in protests in Thailand during 2014. This was first used by students and nurses who first started a revolution in Myanmar by protesting outside, and further carried on by people around Myanmar to tell the military and to tell the world that we are unhappy.
So the military government, they has been trying to shut down our eyes, ears, and mouth for over the last 10 days. The government cut off all the broadcasting services except the 2 national channels, which are called MRTV and Myawaddy. So those are the 2 national channels only allowed. So these 2 channels, they do not show what is happening in our country. In this channel, you will see people exercising happily, soldiers helping people, to send a message that the country is peaceful. But that's not what is happening actually. People are on the street. My family is on the street. My friends are on the streets. Everybody's on the street. So military, they threatened to cut the telecommunication and internet as well. Myanmar was put under darkness, literally. But then internet is back after a couple of days. Facebook is the major social media in my country. People use it to raise awareness and show the videos of what really is happening in Myanmar. It plays a very crucial role in domestic movement. It's like the personal channel of every citizen. It's because those national channels they are spreading fake news. So we are relying only on those social medias. Military they ban Facebook and Instagram again. It is but then the VPN is found as a solution to still use Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, you can go.
And just as Myo said, the military tried to silence the people in multiple ways. As he suggested, they tried to silence the broadcasting services, the internet, telecommunication. There were just so many things that they were trying to do to make us shut up. But we did not shut up. That it doesn't stop there. They tried to cut off the internet for 28 hours. And as soon as that happened, everybody went on the streets. We knew that there were police officers, there were soldiers carrying guns, there were water trucks ready to stop us with water cannons from protesting. But we still went on the streets because we're all angry about this. And even though the internet was not available, people were out in the streets, people were chanting, people were telling the soldiers and the police officers to come to our side. You're fighting for the wrong group. We need to fight for the people. That's what the police is. That's what the soldiers are for, to fight for the people. But instead, they are actually shooting at us, and they're actually using their water cannons at us to hurt us, to silence us from saying whatever we need to say. And a lot of things happened when the internet was not around, and people from outside of Myanmar and people in Myanmar were forced to only communicate each other by using expensive international phone calls. And even so, people from abroad and people from within still call each other because we need to spread the news. And we cannot afford to stop for a day from telling people what's going on. And 28 hours after all these internet cutting happened, they restored the internet. And rumor has it that it was because United Nations representatives were coming into the country and they wanted to look good in front of them. And so they restored the internet again. And as soon as the internet opened, the entire country bursted open, sharing posts, writing posts, taking pictures, showing people from around the world about how the protests are going and how people are angry about it. There were so many groups that were protesting. There were the LGBTQI members. There were bodybuilders. There were Rohingya peoples coming to our side to protest with us. There were nurses, doctors, and there were also immigration officers who work in very important civil roles. They all came out all in the streets to tell everybody that we're unhappy. And yet the military is still trying to pretend that everything is okay. Myo, do you want to elaborate more?
Yeah. Now I want to tell you how the police is handling the protest. So every riot, police has shields and bats. Police they use water cannons to break the large groups. It is you can see those videos in Facebook. Police were ordered to use rubber ammunition. Snipers were placed on top of tall buildings. There were rumors of some water trucks having acid instead of water. I saw the video of police beating up the peacefully protesting people. Multiple people were shot with rubber ammunition. We also witnessed the use live ammunition to shoot the people. Two people, 19-year-old and a middle-aged man, were murdered by the police with live ammunition. So today, cyber law was announced. I guess it is to control the freedom of speech. For sure, anyone who portrays the military in a bad way will be prosecuted. The students in my country, they are having a hard time. 2021 is not a good year for them. The school shut down because of the COVID-19, and there's no virtual class like us. In other countries, people are already going to school. They are staying in their home. Now they are on the street, and also, like other countries, we are supposed to be having vaccines by now, but instead we are all interrupted by this military coup, and everybody's attention switches from the COVID-19 vaccines to the domestic movement. So yeah, I can even imagine how coronavirus have spread all over our country, and this is very sad.
There are a lot of domestic movements going on in our country, but it's also important to know about the international movements that are occurring around the world for Myanmar. So I would like to pass it on to Thawdar and Nora to elaborate more on international movements.
All right, sounds good. All right, thank you, Eric and Myo, for talking about the domestic movement. And here's so international movement is also very important for a lot of us who can be physically there, because that's what we can do. We can do the best is just to expose the military, like help spread the information, help raise the awareness. And what I have been doing, and what we all have been doing, is trying to translate all these official documents released by the military, and there are also some secret leaked videos or police documents that were released by the police or the military, and we're trying to translate them and just send them back to my friends, and we also shared it on social media. And we have a large US Myanmar student network here, and we've been trying to connecting with a lot of other friends from different university. They have been also doing their part at giving their talks in university. A friend of mine in Oklahoma, University of Oklahoma, where also a part of organizing a small protest in Oklahoma City. So these walks are very crucial in raising in getting international attention, and another thing is there are so many not only students but also workers are out. There are many workers outside of Myanmar, especially in Thailand. There are so many migrant workers, and they understand why they are in they have to go out and work. It's all because of how the military has crippled the country economy. And currently, as Eric and Myo mentioned, there is a civil disobedience movement going on, and everybody who stopped working will stop earning money. Like they will the government officially announced that they will be fired and prosecuted. So these migrant workers are saying that don't worry, we're gonna support you. At least like one person can contribute at just like $2 a month, and that suffice. That's enough for all of the government workers. So if the civil disobedience movement continues, the military government will stop functioning. It's very effective. It's one of the most effective movement of a protest. So we really can't do much other than like raising awareness. We really can't be physically there. I really wanted to be there physically, marching with my friends, my family, my relatives, but they've been sending photos, just trying to raise awareness. We all are doing that. Just try to read the news. Like Myanmar people really like having someone outside of Myanmar supporting them. That gives them such a good moral boost, because the military is waiting the time that people get tired and they will take action. Now currently the people are very active. It's like they are raging fire, and the military is waiting the time when things are going to go down, and that's when the moral boost matters. Nora, do you have anything to add?
So in addition to all the things that Thawdar has elaborated on, I also want to add that people have been going in front of United Nations headquarters to protest. It happened starting in, I think, Japan, and then it spread. Like even my cousin who is in New York was able to, face it in real time and in person, which is hard for me because we're all in the Midwest right now, and it's so hard to be out here when we want to be either at home participating on the streets, or at least around expats or migrants who are here in US or any other countries abroad. And so it's also very important to see what other nations are doing. For instance, United Nations did act on it. The Security Council, which has the 15 member states, claimed that they also support our movements, and that all those that are detained who are part of the National League for Democracy must be released. And it's really rare because it's not common that these member states always agree on something. So that was really encouraging for us, or so we thought. So out of those permanent 5 members, if you may know who they are, China, Russia are part of them. And we've been getting some information. Those are, don't take our word for it yet. These are just rumors and very, very secretive intel that we've been receiving and exploring, is that flights from China has been entering into Myanmar, and weaponry in terms of cargo and those things are being unloaded in Myanmar from Russia. So this is really worrying, because with the cyber law that Myo was talking about earlier, they could get help from China to instill that Facebook ban that China has already done in its country. So these are really worrying, even though they were part of the Security Council and put the military who responsible, they shouldn't be able to do that. They said that publicly, and yet they're secretly behind the scenes helping Myanmar. And this is extremely worrying for us all. And these are recent news that we've been getting every day as the situation escalates and the danger accumulates. So this is really worrying for us. But also today, Joe Biden sent out official statement saying that he is sanctioning targets, specifically placing it on the military people. So I've personally been also writing about petitions. So I've been part of those people who are not only just sharing and spreading news or translating, but writing petitions. And I can't even use my actual name because I am worried about consequences that could happen, if not to me, to my family back home. That is how dire the situation is. So one of my petitions was to request that US doesn't place a blanket sanction on Myanmar, which has happened before in the past. And this today proved us that at least this sanction is successful. Because Joe Biden is trying to place that targeted sanction on the military members only. So that's a good news, but also bad news in terms of Russia and China coming to help the military in extremely secretive ways. With that in mind, Thora, would you like to pass it on to Professor Selcuk?
Sure. Yeah. I just want to add a little bit more of that. So this is we're trying to making people see Russia and China as a bad country. It's just mainly because China and Russia has been an ally, a military supply provider to the military government for a really long time. We have a lot of military ordnance, like weapons, a lot of stuff from Russia and China, and it's also used. They are all used in all these ethnic cleansing activities by the military. So that's one thing we're trying to just expose as much as we can, as like the secretive flights coming in from China. And last night there was a very secretive flight coming into Myanmar from Egypt, very suspicious non-stop flight. And that flight was either from the plane that was coming from was only used in North Korea, which was also a former ally of the military, and Russia. So they are supposed to be carrying those small crates that's supposed to be some military supplies, but of course verifications and further investigations are needed. And of course, like social movement again on social media, there are people are using a lot of Facebook, but as you all know, Facebook is not a really effective way to get a lot of good international attention. So people are learning how to use Twitters, and now they are up to about 2 million Twitter posts with hashtag Myanmar. So if you want to go on and search for the issue, just search hashtag Myanmar, hashtag what's happening in Myanmar, hashtag Myanmar military coup. And with that being said, I will pass it on to Professor Saojun.
Okay, thank you, all four of you. I think what you did here is basically you personified, what does it mean to live under an authoritarian regime, and what does it mean to live in another country, right? But meanwhile, your country is going through, this process. So I think there is, two things going on there. So what I'm gonna do, after hearing your reflections, I just want to reflect on my own experience, and I think that's how this actually event started. Because when the coup was happening in Myanmar, I reached out to Nora because I know how it feels, to have a coup in your home country when you're so distant in the United States, and when everyone around you is just like, they either don't know about it, they don't care about it, or they're just uninformed about it. So it helped me really, your experience, not only our previous conversation, but your description right now, helped me connect with my own experience. So for the people in the audience, I want them to know, people like us who came to the country initially as an international student, and I'm also now a professor here. We're not only stressed about what's going on in this country with the whole hostile, anti-immigrant and racist incidents, but we're also extremely stressed about what's going on in our home countries that are going through these authoritarian measures. Again, the coup I was talking about was back in 2016. I was just in Miami at that time, and I just saw, on social media that, the Turkish military is launching a coup. I was like, how is that possible? The main difference between Myanmar and Turkey, what I think makes the coup more likely to succeed, unfortunately, is that the coup in Myanmar seems to be a top-down coup, so the entire military is basically taking over government, and in which in Myanmar, to my knowledge, the military has already been very active in politics, right? They already had reserved domain, they already had, seats in the parliament. One of the vice presidents in Myanmar, is basically associated with the military. So in that sense, it's different than the Turkish, which failed, thankfully, right? And the reason why that coup failed, but because it was not a coup by the generals, right? That it wasn't a coup that was implemented by the generals, but it was actually a coup in defiance of the chain of command, which tend to be actually more bloody coups, because those type of coups usually lead to civil war, especially if the military divides in between the two factions, the one that support the coup and then the one that opposes the coup. So in that sense, what you guys shared, basically, I think shared with the audience, what does it mean to have family members? Nora is, writing a petition. I always had that fear as well, especially when I'm posting on social media and criticizing the Turkish government. Every time I enter Turkey, at the back of my head, it's like, what if they, arrest me for, a tweet that I sent, let's say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, which has happened to a lot of people. So in that sense, us having here gives us a privilege, right? We're not there having, experiencing that crackdown on a daily basis. We do have internet access, we have our voice, but at the same time, we're not completely detached from it. Like authoritarian regimes like Myanmar, Turkey, and China and others, they're not only monitoring their citizens in the country, but they're also monitoring the citizens, outside of the country. So in that sense, we're in a difficult situation. There are again parallels with the U.S., but in the U.S. case, it is much less extreme. I think the comparison is a little bit harder to draw there. So that's why I'm really glad that you shared some of the personal experience about this military coup and the overall involvement of the military in Myanmar politics, right? That this is to my knowledge or to my understanding, the military didn't just come out of nowhere. They were already very knowledgeable. They were already very into the political system, which also, again, I think for our audience who are more familiar with democratic transitions and military coups around the world, democracy is very fragile, right? When we read in history textbooks that this country had a military regime and then they transitioned to democracy, we tend to assume that, okay, they transitioned to democracy and from now on they're always going to be a democracy, right? But that's not always the case. So these transitions that Myanmar went through, transition from military regime to democracy, happened in other countries as well. Some countries, reverted back to military regimes, and others did not. So in Myanmar, it seems like the military is trying to take power, but the international dynamics, as you also said, are important too. I think for international dynamics, I just want to add 2 comments, and then I'll pass it to Nora for additional comments on this. I think there are 2 processes going on at the same time. One is what we call the third wave of autocratization. So the initial wave being the interwar period when the Hitler, Mussolini, and other fascist communist movements rise, and then the second reverse wave or the second wave of autocratization in the 60s and the 70s. And again, Myanmar, right during this process, also had a military regime, similar to Latin American countries. And then now we're unfortunately going through a third wave of autocratization. So which means a lot of countries in the world are moving towards authoritarian rather than the democratic direction. So what's going on in Myanmar in that sense, unfortunately, is not an exception, but it's actually a confirmation of what's going on in the rest of the world. And that includes the United States. So for those of you who are more familiar with the US, you might, consider the recent developments in the US as an exception. But I think it is not the exception, but it is unfortunately, this movement away from human rights, movement away from democracy has become the norm. And then the positive news, I think, with the change of government in the United States, there is at least some hope that US can, promote democracy. It will take time because I think in the US case, US has lost some of its credibility, right? That this country that claimed to be, the biggest democracy in the world, etc., we all saw that was just a myth, that was not a reality. So in that sense, clearly, I think Biden's election could be some hope, as Nora said, the permanent 5 members, coming together, condemning the coup. But I think the right steps that should be taken is open to discussion. Again, I don't want to turn it into an academic discussion, but I think your story is basically connect all these concepts that we talk about in our classrooms, right? Military regimes, violations of human rights, LGBT rights, in reality and in practice. And you're not only experiencing that as, the diaspora, you guys are the diaspora community, at least for the time being, but also with your family members that, go through that on a daily basis. So I would like to pass it to Nora if she wants to add some more global perspective on this. Meanwhile, I'm also monitoring the questions. We have a couple of questions, but I think the students shared some really interesting reflections. So I would be happy to receive some more questions. We currently have around 60 people watching the event from Luther and outside. So I would be happy to hear more questions so that when Nora finishes, we can move to the Q&A part of our event.
All right. Thank you, Professor Selcuk, for explaining this relevance and how it's all connected. As an international studies major who has taken many classes from Professor Selcuk as well, I just see so many connections in terms of, like I said, Myanmar is going against all those values that international organization like United Nations has set forward, so that there will be peace, that there will be a sustainable future. And as we have said earlier, with all the support that could have been potentially coming in from China and Russia, which China, as we said, has always been that quiet supporter behind Myanmar. So with that, what that could entail is that US and China has always been against each other in terms of a power struggle. It's like a tug of war. And I do not want our country, Myanmar, to become that element that they are tugging for power. And this is extremely worrying for people like us who are, whether you are outside or whether you are inside Myanmar, to see this unfold right in front of us. And this is just a theory, but the worst thing that could happen with all of this happening is a proxy war. If countries decide to actually start supporting in terms of militants, weaponry, that's going to lead into a lot more complex and worrying conversations and things that are going to devastate our country. So please be mindful that this is not just about some Southeast Asian country, small Southeast Asian country that we are never going to hear again. It's very relevant, and it's relevant especially if you are in the US and a US citizen. It's about you as well. So please note that, and please note all of our experiences and how we have connected it in an intercultural view of this. Thank you so much. And now I will turn it back to Professor Selcuk.
Thank you, Nora. We do have 3 questions. So since we talked about how everything is connected and we live in a global world, right? I want to start with the first question we received from John Lund. He said, "For far too long, we Americans have preached to the others around the world about the values of democracy, free and fair elections, and the peaceful transition of power." He says, "I'm sorry to say, we no longer have credibility on these topics. It's a national shame." So the question here then, to what extent do you believe the recent events in the US contributed to your military leaders feeling free to condemn your free and fair elections. So I think to paraphrase this question, to what extent do you think Trump's false allegations of electoral fraud, enabled or facilitated the military leaders in Myanmar just to, make those allegations without having really have to back it up with any concrete data? So I think the way we should do it is we can hear from every one of you. Maybe you can briefly comment on how you see it, because you guys are in a unique situation, right? You do follow the developments in the US. You're, again, stressed about it, but at the same time, you see how the developments in the US can have that domino effect in other parts of the world. So maybe we should begin with Myo and then go to Thawdar and then Eric and then Nora.
Yeah. So in my country, like when one of my friend asked, like international friend asked me, how is it possible to overthrow a current government? And so I don't really have a good answer. You are the president, and you're not associated with the military. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. And yeah, like in this scenario is very similar to what happened in the U.S. as well. I think there's even what happened to in Washington D.C. and also there's a riot, there's a protest against NLD party in my country as well. But the military took the excuse, to overthrow our current government. Yeah.
I mean, I can jump into. Oh, I'll go in order. Eric, do you have anything to say?
You can say first.
Oh yeah, right. So I remember when Trump came to how to say power. Trump took during the Trump administration. There are a few people in Myanmar, especially those of extreme conservatives and those extremist monks, very nationalistic and very patriotic. People are supporting that Trump is doing the right action. He's doing the right action of kicking out illegal immigrants. It's kicking out these people because they are just sucking out the country's resources and stuff. And those kind of people there are a lot of those kind of people in the military. So the military people are so brainwashed. It's like, because they are separated, the military can shape whatever they want to the soldiers. Recently, I saw a post from a very influential monk from the military, like a conservative monk, that Trump is doing the right action, so he should win the 2020 election. And also when Trump decided to relocate U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to in Israel to I forgot what the city name.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, Jerusalem. It's really, I really think that truly also inspire a lot of the military generals. We used to have, or we still had, I think, a good relationship with Israel. And during that time, there was also the flame of the conflict between Buddhist extremists and Muslim minorities, where also it's still burning. So I'm sure the action of Trump's to some extent inspired these military leaders.
I'm pretty much agree with pretty much what Paula said, and it's true that what the other leaders around the world do have influence over other people as well. So it's kind of like similar to how a celebrity has an impact on a regular person in a way. Like if they do something influential, a normal citizen, a normal follower would take inspiration, take note of what the person does, and will be like, oh, I could do that too. Maybe I should give it a go. And in that same regard, the Capitol storming in the United States, with the things that were going on with Trump supporters and Trump, and regarding the election that took place, I guess you could say that the people in Myanmar, especially the military leaders, were inspired in a way. And they would be like, hey, we can do that too. Why not? And a very close friend of mine told me this, that it's not the excuse that they use that matters. It's what they did that matters. The excuse could have been anything. They could have said that the sky was blue today and we're gonna do a coup. And that is exactly pretty much how that happened. They just didn't care about what the people were thinking or what valid excuses they had. All they cared about was what they wanted. And as a result, I guess by all the crazy things that were happening over the course of the years from 2020 to 2021, like these like psychopathic people were fueled to get what they want.
I also would like to add to what Eric said. They not only they are inspired by those by others. They did a coup in the past as well, so they have experience. So it's not a new thing.
Okay, we do have more questions, and I just talked to Nora, and she said you guys already covered this question. So I want to maybe group a couple of questions because we have around 9 minutes to finish this panel. And then for those of you whose questions are not answered, also feel free to reach out to us, especially the four students. We would be again happy to continue this conversation at the Luther community and beyond. So one of the questions from Barbara Wilkinson, she says, my son, daughter-in-law, and grandsons live in Yangon. It has been very difficult to communicate. Every time there's a VPN, then it is then cut. They did say that the military were shooting this week in Yangon. He does not see that this will change. How are you talking to your families? Telegram, WhatsApp? She said WhatsApp is shut down. So maybe you can, reflect on the way you communicate with your family. So that's one question that you can address in your brief remarks. And then an anonymous person asked, how can Luther students show their support, to the Myanmar community and other international students? We also have questions from Eric Bach, Amy Walden, and John Jansen. Eric Bach and John Jansen are basically asking about what can the international institutions, international organizations can do about it, and what is the human rights dimension of all these. So I can understand that you're not going to be able to address all these questions, but I'm really happy that we got a lot of interest that touches upon a diverse area of topics on this. And Amy Walden's question is interesting too. She said, what is one thing you wish Americans understood about the situation in your country? And she is basically asking you to reflect. Again, we have questions on what can Luther community do, what can the UN do, what is the human rights dimension here, and what is something that Americans understood about your country. Again, you won't be able to address all these questions, but I wanted to at least read them out. So I'm gonna give you guys maybe a minute each, and then we're gonna have some closing remarks. So let's this time begin with Nora, and then we'll go to Eric, and then Myo, and then Thawdar.
Ooh, there's a lot to cover, but I'm going to choose a specific topic so that the others can touch a different one. So I feel like Eric is really good at the types of apps and telecommunications that are available that we've been using. So I'll leave it that for him. And personally, I would want to talk about, touch a bit on how people can support. So before you approach us about Myanmar, research a little bit. And like Dora has said before, if you want to give moral support, all you need to do is do a hashtag Save Myanmar, hashtag justice for Myanmar, and then Myanmar military coup, and then those kind of things, and then post it on social media. It looks like a really nice moral support for us, and it means a lot. And if you are classmates or so on, if you ever want to stop us on the way and say, hey, how is it going on and how is it unfolding? Any updates? We are willing to talk to you about it. Just have an open conversation with us. We're very happy to inform, educate as we educate ourselves every single day. So another one I really wanted to touch on is besides sanctions, what can people do, right? So I do Model United Nations Club for fun. I am the president of that club, and Professor Orçun is our club advisor. And with the many United Nations rules and laws that exist, digital privacy is a huge part that is part of a human rights violation that they are doing right now. So what can United Nations and specific ICC courts, ICJ courts could do is that condemn Myanmar for many human rights violations, not just limited to digital privacy. But it's very important that we can address that, because sanctions and businesses are not the only things that you can focus on right now. So that's my approach to things, and I will turn it on to others so that they have the floor as well.
Regarding applications that you can use to communicate with people from Myanmar, I recommend Signal. Signal is an encrypted messaging platform, so nobody can actually code in to read your messages or read your calls. So it's a pretty safe platform, and it's not affiliated with Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp in any other way. So the Myanmar has no control over it at the moment. And there's also an application called Rebtel, Rebtel. What it does is it lets you buy international call packages online. So they are doing a discount on Myanmar. So you can buy, for $1, you can get about 33 minutes of phone call. And through that, you can use your US number to call Myanmar people back at home. And it's also another safe way of calling home. But there's one problem with that. There's an issue of soldiers wiretapping into your calls, and maybe they will listen to what you're going to say. So it's just a reminder. Regarding the question of what I would like Luther students and Americans to know, I would say share the news as much as you can, read the news as much as you can, and join us in our hashtag movements, hashtag Save Myanmar, hashtag Civil Disobedience, hashtag Reject the Coup.
So what I would like to say is, I encourage everyone to be a global citizen. Don't act like this is not associated with you. You can learn lessons from us. Well, that's all I have in my mind right now.
Okay, Thawdar, maybe you can answer the questions and then share some of the things that you think the Luther community and others should do. Basically, calling them to act.
Right. Sure. So yeah, to answer Professor Bart's question, why they act now and why they haven't fully left, because since the military reserved 25% of the parliament, their intention was to never leave the power. Their intention was to come back one day if the conditions are met. And the voter frauds that they claim was the one reason they needed to do that. So I think it was a lot of people who are very politically knowledge were predicting this, because they are 25% already. So there's no way the military gonna leave anytime soon. Right. So thank you all for coming, and I would like to give you a few remarks. So it takes at least a whole generation to start a revolution, to have a revolution. Our grandparents fought and they failed. Our parents fought in 1988 and 2007 and they didn't succeed. So we can't let our country fall into the darkness once more, because it's going to take years, it's going to take generations to come back to where we are right now. In the past 5 years, a lot have changed. You can see in the current news how people are a lot more united, a lot more open-minded, a lot more helpful. And that's just 5 years. A lot of people can see what the political manipulation behind the what the military is doing, the dirty acts of the military. So it's so important that this keeps going. 5 years ago, the country planted the seed of a democracy. A seed of justice, and it's just coming out, and the military is trying to stumble on this, kill the seedling. So that's why action is needed. We need to win this. This is in my opinion, this is the last fight that we have for our generation. This is the only chance to finally overthrow the military. So with all the support, with all the moral support that from the international community, I hope we can do this. We can at least show the resilience and the power of the people who the unity of people. So yeah, we can fight oppression. We can fight dictatorship. We just fight one dictator at a time. So thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for their remarks, reflections. Thank you to all the participants who have stayed till the end of this event. And again, this is an event, this is an issue that we will keep talking about in the Luther community. So feel free to reach out to the students if you want to have some one-on-one conversation and learn more about this issue that affects not just people in Myanmar, but I think all of us as global citizens. Have a good evening and stay warm.